Hey YouTubers, I picked up this great looking 2008 Yamaha Grizzly 700 fuel injected with no power steering. On this particular model that I purchased, they had run into, the previous owner had run into a parked RZR and had done some damage to these plastics right here. These have since been fixed, and this guard right here, which is super hard to replace, by the way, in terms of getting the part. It took me 8 months to get mine. And that's a whole nother story. And then a couple other things, but there was no structural damage as far as the frame goes. Everything here was good. All the steering, everything here was good. The only thing that needed some attention as far as the internals was the steering stem. The steering stem was completely turned. It was bent, and so I figured I'd show how I had to replace that. This is going to be kind of a quick video. I apologize. I did not record the initial teardown of it as far as getting it out, so I'll just kind of do a quick breakdown of what I had to do to access the steering stem. Fortunately, in my case, these handlebars were good. The handlebars were not bent. It was the steering stem, which is accessible right here. Now, I have a guard. When I purchased it, they did not have the handlebar guard, and so I have that part coming. It's easy, it just pops off. I don't think there's any screws or anything. It pops on to these handlebars right here. So anyway, I'll show you kind of what I had to do to access that steering stem just quickly. I'm not going to take this guard off, but I'll kind of show you where I had to access the steering stem, nut down below, and go from there. Okay, so on the Grizzly, you've got this front rack that's going to be held in by 4 bolts right here, 12mm bolts. This one's missing, I got to get that one. And then there should be 2 bolts or 2 screws right here, not screws, but 2 bolts that are accessible up underneath. Mine were missing, so I need to get those, but I believe they're 10mm bolts that are going to fit up on both sides of these to hold this fender in place. So you're going to take those off. You're going to take the 4 bolts off here from the support, and then we'll access the plastics down below. With that front rack off, you're going to have access to these plastics right here. There's going to be a push pin right here and a push pin right here, and then there's just going to be little push, this is just held in with a little divot right here. I don't know what they're necessarily called, but they're just pressure. You're just going to barely pull on this to not break that plastic, but pretty easy to access. Your battery's going to be right here, and I'll pull that off and then resume. With these little push pins removed, just gently tug on this and pull that cover off. Pull this front half off right here. It's going to be held under that support right there for that front rack, but it's all right. I don't think you'll have to remove that. Kind of slide this out. Okay, with that removed, you're now going to have access to this part up under here where you've got a kind of a retainer that holds the front half of this of the steering stem. So in my case, right here with this cover off, you've got 12mm bolts right here. You've got 4 of them that you'll be able to just take off, and I was able to take my handlebars and just kind of keep them draped. I mean, they had obviously all these cables and wires connected. I was able to just not even have to worry about those. I just kind of set them off on the side, up here. You're gonna have 2, let's see if we can get this down here. You're gonna have 2 12mm bolts right here that you're gonna be able to access. But first you have to remove the steering or the speedometer. And so in order to do that, what you do is you take this pin off right here. You're gonna take this push pin off. You're gonna take this push pin off right here. You're gonna take this one off. These are kind of a funky little Phillips screwdriver. I had to hold mine on the back and then undo it. Those pins are still good though. With this out of the way, you can then access these screws or these bolts right here pretty easily. In my case, I just took a deep 12mm socket and was able to, with an extension, just access it right here and then take these off. There are these clips, not these clips, there's these little pieces of metal that you're gonna have to take off with not necessarily take off, you just pry them with a flat head to the side. They lock and hold those 12 millimeter bolts in place. So you just take a flat head and you slide those tabs to the side. Same with this side over here. And you can then access those 12 millimeter bolts and take off that retainer for this. So with those two removed and these two removed, one right there and one right there, you can then access the bottom down here, right there. Let's see, right there. That's a 22 millimeter bolt right there. And so let me pause this and I'll show you in the next section. So I noticed that it was really hard to access it from the sides. I could not access it on the sides. So with the grill off, so you can take this front guard off, you take these plastics off, they're just held in place right here on the back. And then down here, you can undo these bolts. You can take these front plastics off and you have access to this whole guard right here. The guard is held in by bolts right here, here, and well, they are held right here, but when you take off that front guard or that front rack, you remove the bolts for that. And those bolts hold in the rack, the support, and this guard right here. With this guard off, you can actually access it, and it's really hard to see from the winch. You can actually access this bolt right here on the side, that's for the steering stem. You can access it from the front with this removed. And from there, I took a 22 millimeter and was able to go up. I had to go to the auto store and get a 22 millimeter shallow socket that I then was able to fit in there. It was really tight, but I was able to access it from the front. With this removed, you can access that bolt from the front and you can take off that 22 millimeter. There is a cotter pin that holds it in place. And with that bolt removed, again, that one right there, you can then pull out this stem. And the stem, you kind of just have to wiggle it and pull it out, and it comes out. So it's held in by those retainer bolts on the front and that 22 millimeter bolt down below. Here's my old steering stem. You can see how it's bent up there at the front. This is where those retainer clips hold on, and you can see it's completely bent from that side from when they hit the parked razor. All this part was good, but yeah, it's just got this this cotter pin and the 22 millimeter bolt that hold on in place down below, and then the two supports. I guess meaning the two bolts that hold in the retainer. I picked this part up, not this one, but I picked the part that's inside on the machine currently. I picked it up for 40 bucks on eBay. It was used, but it was in good working condition. And I think it was, the cost of it was 50 bucks cheaper than what it would have been new, which I was good with. And then the installation is just obviously the reverse. You're gonna feed it in through the top, down below. And again, I didn't have to do anything with the handlebars. The handlebars, I just disconnected right here, took off these 4 bolts, and then was able to feed it down through, down into the steering components down here, and then got my 22 millimeter and threw it up back on, and then the cotter pin. This is the used steering stem that I bought. It only fit one way. So when I first fed it through, and I was trying to feed it through the, forgive me for not spacing what the name of this is. It only fit one way. I tried to put it in one way with the wheel straight. So I set the wheel straight. I fed it in straight with this kind of pointing straight, I guess. It went straight in, but it would not go into the steering component down below. I had to rotate it 180 degrees and then it slid right in. So I don't know if that was just, you know, luck or what, but it was. I did need to flip it 100 degrees or turn it 100 degrees, and then it fit right into the teeth of the steering down here. And then I threw that bolt on, put that cotter pin in, and then was able to access those bolts up here. So the steering stem on this one, again, it is non-power steering, was relatively easy. It was actually easier than I thought it was going to be. And you don't have to take too much off. The only thing that I will mention is that in order to access the speedometer right here, it's held in place by these 10mm bolts. There's 4 of them. So there's that one, this one, and then the same on the other side. And with this clip removed, you can access these relatively easy. I did not have to take these off. I just kind of pushed them back a little bit and was able to get my shallow 10mm socket on that. Same on this side. So I did not have to take off any of these fenders. I left that on. I took off the speedometer and was able to access it from the front. And again, same thing with the handlebars. I did not have to completely unhook these wires. I just kind of dangle it off to the side. So, you know, for a dummy like me, probably took me maybe an hour to figure it all out. But if I were to do it again, it'd maybe be a 30 or 45 minute job. And relatively cheap. 40 bucks is what I spent on that part. So I'll put this back together, but hopefully this helps someone